Welcome to an intro to the healthcare market, part one, developing a market point of view. Hi, I'm Bob Teague, Chief Medical Officer at Greenroom Technologies. In this segment, we will establish some basic tenets of the U.S. healthcare market relevant to the introduction and growth of health technologies. A market consists of a willing buyer, a willing seller, and a means of transaction. If both buyers and sellers have the same point of view about value, no profit-producing transaction occurs. Having more than one point of view that dictates relative value is required to make a market. Developing a point of view is the first step required. A point of view is your unique insight that brings value to customers and benefit to your stakeholders. A point of view is more than an opinion or feeling or intuition, though these may be helpful in the process of developing one. A point of view is the synthesis of evidence and experience. Two E's, evidence and experience. Your point of view is also subject to qualitative interpretation and biases. Be aware of these and insist on evidence. Armed with a point of view, what is that market edge? Your unique insight where you can create value is defined by your customers and market success as you define it. Is there a healthcare system? Based on a systems definition, a healthcare system would be one that is designed to deliver health. This is not exactly what we have. What we call a healthcare system is more of a political system designed to control and distribute resources and payments for the delivery of care to individuals with active health conditions. Access to care and quality of care are inconsistent and unpredictable, challenging the very idea of a system. Despite that we don't have a single-payer system based on central government control, the healthcare system, as we call it, procures resources very much like the government does, with some major differences. Is there a healthcare market? At the simplest definition, we have a healthcare market in that there exists a willing buyer and a willing seller and a means of transaction. However, unlike a usual commercial market, the buying and selling and transacting do not take place between the same two parties. We have a third-party payer who controls the transaction. There is no price information exchange in the usual sense between provider of service and recipient of service, and no free exchange of data exists in the usual market. Lacking those two things that provide instantaneous insight and feedback, one could argue it's not really a market, since the transaction of payment occurs with a different party, thus interrupting the usual value creation feedback. What is called the healthcare market is extremely complex and non-intuitive. This is no lemonade stand. It's very different from the way we normally experience a marketplace. Learning to navigate these market aberrations can spell the difference between market success for your product or failure to thrive, even for the most innovative new technology or solution. We could think of the healthcare system as it exists as a government-regulated utility. As such, political and government policy primarily determine the finance and delivery mechanism of healthcare. The story of government healthcare policy of today started in the era of 1946 to 48, when integrated finance and delivery in the form of single-payer government-sponsored insurance was rejected in favor of employer-based health plans and fee-for-service payments. Access, quality, and cost acceleration were not directly addressed, as it was assumed the market would take care of these. Ironically, throughout the succeeding decades, the policy direction has been to integrate finance and delivery in order to address cost and quality of outcomes. A recent example is Medicare Advantage. Consolidation is favored by government in the circumstance of a high regulatory regime, which healthcare is. Government favors oligopoly in this circumstance because regulatory compliance is easier to achieve. The result has been a relentless consolidation of both finance and delivery in the non-governmental parts of healthcare, with an exponential explosion in cost. Systemization of care processes and payments have slowly been implemented over the decades for the purpose of decreasing clinical outcome variation and decreasing cost uncertainty. One could say this hasn't exactly worked out, but this is where great opportunity for technology solutions now exists. Meet the healthcare cartel. Some call this the medical-industrial complex as an analog to the military-industrial complex. The connotation of cartel has been negative in the U.S., for example, through OPEC or drug cartels, but the definition may be very applicable. A cartel is an association of manufacturers or suppliers with the purpose of maintaining prices at a high level and restricting competition. Whether this was the original intent or not, this has become the outcome. The healthcare cartel at founding was self-organizing and was in no way a designed system. Nobody would purposefully design this thing as a way to deliver health. The 6 members formed a functional cartel of interest from the business imperatives of the post-World War II decision to adopt an employer-based system and to maintain fee-for-service. These entities simply rushed to fill a void. It was never designed to be patient-centered. Consumerism in healthcare was not even a possibility at the time. It was first and always payment methodology-centered. Access, cost, quality, and patient experience were pushed down to the members to define and determine. Because it is employer-based, access to best practice medicine became class-based and not universal. The members of the cartel are government, payer-based commercial plans, ERISA-based employer plans, hospitals, physicians, and a biopharma complex. Note that no patient or consumer has direct representation. The cartel has been very adaptive and resilient over the years, although for the first time in 2010, the Affordable Care Act altered some of the relationships and destabilized them to a degree. The existence of the cartel partly explains why healthcare technology is a business-to-business or B2B market and is not a business-to-consumer or B2C market, though that may be starting to change. Many of us have thought for 2.5 decades that consumers would eventually take over the direction of their own care supported by suitable technology solutions. COVID may finally have us on the threshold of this advance. To understand the healthcare market at the purchaser level is to understand the different business models used by either the for-profit or not-for-profit entities of healthcare. The not-for-profit designation is mostly a tax definition that defines the trade-off that if you can demonstrate a public good, you don't have to pay taxes on your profits or revenue in excess of expenses, as it's called. While not-for-profit entities function largely the same way operationally as for-profit ones, generally speaking, they have less access to capital and operate mainly on a budgeted cash basis. About 2/3 of the money spent in healthcare flows through not-for-profit entities. When considering selling to not-for-profit entities, remember how they differ from the for-profit ones in their respective business models. Note that no consumer or patient is a direct player in this construct. Most healthcare technology is a B2B sale. Consumers and patients don't pay for most healthcare service or goods directly, but do so through their health plan or the government, a third party. Most readily available money for investing in new technology is on the for-profit side of this bifurcated market. This adds significant complexity to any market entry planning. Plan to work on both sides of the street, but remember, they are not the same business model. This is a representation of the healthcare market as you face it. Seldom does a startup or smaller company sell directly to the cartel. Occasionally this happens through strategic marketing or product relationships, and the larger firm then becomes the source of product distribution. Often a buyer customer is identified, but to get to them you have to go through someone else. It is wise to always ask, who is my customer's customer? This is most often who you should be talking to and understanding both upstream and downstream customer needs and value propositions. Like we said, it's complicated. Take a good look at the healthcare market as we face it today. To learn more, join us for part 2 of the Green Room Intro to Healthcare Market series. Thank you for joining us in the Green Room. I'm Dr. Bob Teague, Chief Medical Officer for Green Room Technologies. Reach out to me via email at bob@greenroomtx.com or join Green Room for more exploration of the healthcare market on www.greenroomtx.com. Navigate to the content page and to the market content room. Click the sign up button. We'll see you next time.